All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our forum at ShortFest. My name is Anna Souza. I'm the forum producer. We also have Harrison Harvey here from our forum team. We've got a couple more days of panels and conversations planned for you. We hope you've been enjoying them throughout the week. And you can still register right up until events start. So please feel free to do that and keep checking our schedule. And we are here today for Meet the Programmers. I'm really excited about this panel and to be able to hear from different folks about the festival landscape right now. And I would, to kick us all off, I'm going to introduce our fantastic moderator, Melina Saval. Melina, please take it away.
Hey, how are you? Thanks. So glad to be here. Such a great fest, and hopefully it'll be back to in person next year, which will be great. So yeah, I mean, I think we'll just go ahead and I will introduce you guys. And first we have Paul Sloop. He's the short films programming manager of the Cleveland International Film Festival. So let's say hi to Paul. Hello, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Melina.
And we have Gabe and Amburgh. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Perfect.
Okay. You're the film programmer and the film exhibition manager for South by Southwest. Welcome aboard.
Thanks for having us.
Amber Love, programmer for the New Orleans Film Festival. Let's say hello to Amber Love. And we have Lisa Ogdie, the programmer for the short films at the Sundance Film Festival. So let's say hi to Lisa.
Hello.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us. So, I mean, I know that the first question I'm going to ask is, how competitive are these fests in order to, get selected? I know it's a broad question, but it's the probably top question I get that people ask me. How competitive is it to get into these fests? And is there any extra something that I can do to get somebody to look at my film that I've submitted? So if you want to talk, start with Paul, I'd love to go around and just like honest, tell the truth. How competitive is it to get into these fests?
I think especially short films in the last 5 to 10 years have become really competitive because so many high quality short films are made. We're like a top tier regional festival and I think New Orleans is on par with us in that way. We're more regional, where South by Southwest and Sundance have reputations that exceed that because of their industry reach as well. We really serve our communities, and we have passionate communities. I get an average of over 100,000 people attend our festival, but they're just people who come that are passionate about seeing films and supporting independent filmmakers. But that leads to extraordinary numbers in submissions. I'd say we probably get about 60-70% of what the bigger festivals get. So we're in the 4,000 to 5,000 range these days. And that's a lot of films. And at least 3 people see every film. But truly, the only way to potentially get seen earlier is making a festival like this, where I'm shopping and looking at all the films that are out there. I also pay attention to what plays Sundance and always reach out to their filmmakers and invite them to submit. And because I know their films made Sundance, I'm going to make sure that I've seen them. Same with South by Southwest, Tribeca, other major festivals. I've been to New Orleans. So the only way in my festival I know to make sure you're seen by the programmer is to be into one of these fests or be recommended by one of my colleagues who reaches out and says, hey, I think this is ideal. I've seen what you've programmed, things like that. Or be an alum. We're always going to look at our alum films. But in the end, we program the strongest films we find, and 70% of our lineup every year is films that were submitted that we knew nothing about. So in the end, it's not an edge. It's not going to keep you out of the festival, not at all. Submit great work, and if we find it, we're gonna program it.
Cool. Gabe, how about you? Anything to add to that about South by Southwest?
Yeah, it's just the honest answer of how competitive it is, just the sheer volume of submissions that we get and the limited number of spots that we have. It's very, very difficult. I think we program less than almost 2% of the number of submissions we actually get. you know, we're not competitive with other festivals, you know, especially with our shorts program. You know, obviously we love premieres, but it's not the end all be all. Like if we love the film and it's played Sundance or New Orleans and it works for our program, we're going to play it. So, you know, if it has played 50 festivals versus none or two, you know, the one that's played fewer will probably get weighted a little differently than the one that has had a lot of exposure. But again, we've made exceptions for films that have played 50 festivals, but we just think it's right for our audience. Because at the end of the day, you know, what Sundance programs or Cleveland is going to be different than what we program. We have different audiences. And, you know, like in our event, we're not just a film festival. We're also this like massive tech conference. We're also a music festival as well. So, you know, with that in mind and how competitive it is, I think it's just so important for filmmakers to do your research on the festivals before you submit. It can be very expensive. And I know on Film Freeway, it's really easy to just like, all right, let's submit to all of these. But, you know, kind of save your money and do research and see the films that are programmed. And that's kind of like the first step to help you in deciding like what is right for my film.
Great. Amber, what do you think about that? Have anything to add?
I just want to hardcore second, do your research. That is like my number one advice that I give to filmmakers, because yes, festivals do change and shift over time. But if you look at their past slate, you can get a sense of the type of films that they tend to program, how many they tend to program, et cetera. And so that can actually save you a lot of time and a lot of money if your film doesn't seem like it fits kind of within the slate of films that they programmed in the past. In terms of how difficult or competitive it is, New Orleans is also kind of in the 4,000 to 5,000 range of submissions. I will say for us, our screening process is a little different. So someone who is on the programming staff is actually watching every single film that's submitted all the way through. So for us, there isn't a specific way to get your film seen by a programmer, because just submitting will get your film seen by a programmer all the way through. So that is one thing that's interesting for us. I would say something that would kind of also help your submission is recently we've added questions about inclusivity and questions about how you're building your team and your connection to the subject matter for both documentary and for narrative, particularly for shorts, because we're talking about that today. But I would say take those questions seriously. We've seen a lot of submissions that don't really answer them, or just say like, yes, and don't actually give a fleshed thought out answer. And I will say we're paying a lot of attention to what filmmakers are writing about their film and how they're talking about their film and how they're connecting with the community and their subject matter. So pay attention to those. But yeah, I guess that's all I have to add.
Cool. Lisa, I think the assumption is that you probably get more films than any other fest, but I could be wrong.
I think we probably do. We usually get about 10,000 each year and end up playing between 50 to maybe 80, but it's really around 60. I think last year we played 50 because it was slightly smaller because of the virtual situation. But we're similar in that, I mean, I just want to second everything everyone said, and we're similar that everyone on the programming team is watching all the submissions. So a programmer is going to see your film if you submit it. And there's really not anything special you can do to make it stand out other than putting the work into the film. You make a great film and we connect with it, like that's going to be what gets it into the festival. Research is a big thing. I'd also say don't necessarily worry about press kits or hiring publicists or things like that until you get into a festival. They can be useful once you're in a festival and you're trying to get exposure, but beforehand, I think put that money into the film rather than trying to build up momentum before you're sort of over the hurdle.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing you said. I have, and just to open that up a little bit, I do find, and I don't know if you have all found this too, so many people spending more time and energy in the relationships rather than in the creative rather in creating something that just is good and is strong. I have so many people even coming to me because, you know, as a journalist, I have contacts and addresses, and they want to know who to reach out to and who's a good person to help. And I'm like, are you happy with your film? And I don't know if any of you have something to add to that, you know, just to reiterate, like, spending money and even effort trying to get so many people in your corner when really the best thing to have in your corner is just a really great piece of material. It's almost like sometimes I wonder, is it a self-esteem thing? People don't believe in themselves. They think they need somebody bigger to like be part of the project, even before the project is the best it can be. So what are, just to dovetail on that, I'd love to hear somebody else's thoughts on that too, because I find it like, focus, you know, focus on the craft.
Make a great film and we festivals will follow. It works the opposite. Many times the films I love, I haven't met anybody, communicated with anybody. That's way more often the case than vice versa. As a matter of fact, I'm terrified usually when I meet somebody I really like and haven't seen their film yet, because you're like, the film's got to match. I'm not going to program a film and affect our lineup just because I like somebody. But the way it works the other way with me, I'm so passionate about short films. I've been doing this about 20 years that I become a huge advocate for the films I love. There are 6 or 7 programmers on the circuit who, you know, come to me every year looking for my list, and I'm eager. I've got it built and ready to share and recommend. So even if I haven't met you yet, if I love your film, you're going to be getting emails from other festivals saying, hey, you know, I've gotten numerous emails this year, like, I've been reached out to by 3 other festivals yeah, we love your film. We want to promote the work. That's my passion, is for getting that work in front of people, which is why one of the things Sundance does that I've always done too, despite our team having in the notes otherwise, is I don't care for films online, because my audience doesn't watch short films online. They come to the festival and they expect me to curate the best films. And if you made an outstanding short film, but you released it before my festival, I still know my audience has no idea about that. I'm programming the best films I can find, which is my way of reiterating what you're saying. Yeah, make a great film, and I'm going to bend over backwards to play it and help it find other homes to play as well. And I have 3 that I program myself, so it's already a jump.
Yeah. Anybody else have something to add about that? Gabe?
Yeah, I can add to that. So I also get a reasonable amount of emails of people asking for feedback on their films, or like, what could they have done better? I just want to say, make the film that you feel passionate about, that you feel strongly about, that you want to make. Because again, if it's a good film, we're going to program it. Don't make a film for a festival, because that's more often than not going to work out, and you're going to be kind of sad. And it's just make the film that you feel good and passionate about. That's what I'll add.
Yeah, great note.
I'd agree with that. And on that same note, you know, I'm not sure about everyone else on here, but one of the reasons that, you know, we don't want to give feedback to a filmmaker on their film is because our assessment is, was your film a fit for ours? It's not an assessment of good or bad. Like, it might not have been right for our festival, or we absolutely love the film, but we only have so many slots to put it in. So, you know, getting a rejection from a festival is not always an indication that your film isn't good. So if you meet resistance from a programmer and not really, you know, wanting to give feedback on your film after it's rejected, that's the main reason, is because we don't want you taking what we said as an absolute about your film, because that's not the case. We're all programming for our audience and for our event.
Yeah. Lisa, I mean, I'm sure, you know, because I think, you know, Sundance is probably the first stop for many filmmakers, or like, I'm going to submit here and then I'm going to submit to other places. Mm-hmm. And so you have to issue a lot of rejections as just par for the course. Mm-hmm. Do you have any just kind of advice for people kind of to dovetail on that get a rejection from Sundance, but there's a whole world out there of other fests?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and just as Gabe said, all festivals have different audiences. Like, there might be a Venn diagram of overlap between, you know, all of them, but it's very different. And that's where the research is key. And I understand, you know, wanting to like do something special to get your film to the next level and developing relationships. Those are all good things, but like, it's not going to, for us, it's not going to make a difference. And I think most programmers would tell you the same thing. It's our job to know filmmakers, and we love knowing them and knowing what they're doing and tracking what they're doing. But I mean, for the 50 to 60 that we get to make happy, there are 9,900 others that we're rejecting. And that doesn't mean that like your film isn't great or it might not play anywhere else. It's just, I would say, I know it's difficult but be nice, move on to the next thing, because you never know. And like we like so many films that end up not playing, and like Paul, we recommend stuff, we talk to each other, we send stuff around. It's not the end all be all if you're rejected from a festival. And we've shown filmmakers who have been rejected for years, and then finally one year, it just ends up working.
Yeah. I wanted to talk just about the short film format as well, because years and years ago, it seemed like, making a short film was a really good stepping stone in order to make a feature. But now with so many streaming options, short films like of the 40-minute length or something, that's actually something, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's actually something that a lot of streamers like Netflix or HBO, they're actually in search of. So, to buy up. So has this kind of affected in any way the decision, what you kind of take in, or has that affected at all just the status of the short film at the film festival kind of vibe? I mean, you can sell a short film and it can get you, it's not just a stepping stone, it could be your premiere piece or your debut piece that the world sees. So I don't know if that has affected anything in the short film festival space. Whoever wants to go first, Paul.
I know for us, we're seeing more films that by the time we say, yes, we're accepting you, say they've been acquired by somebody. Right. I haven't had many pull out. So far what I'm witnessing is that, especially like if they're early in the submission process, is that the sources are sort of using us too, if we've selected the film, to help get it launched and waiting before they release it, giving a little festival time. That's working out fine. I've also had films that, that were already purchased before, but they're still giving us that space so far. I don't know if that's going to change. For me, same thing though. Again, even the people I know, like, they're not going to go searching on Netflix for it. So unless Netflix makes a big deal about it, I'd still play it, even if, as long as Netflix says yes. And typically Netflix so far, like Cleveland is Oscar qualifying in all 3 categories. They're typically saying yes to that. I've heard that that's one of Netflix's things, is that they can definitely play Oscar qualifying festivals, even if they're already, on the move. So yeah, I think it's something that's going to be ongoing and continuing to evolve as to what that looks like. But so far it has not affected how we program it all.
Anybody else have any thoughts about that?
I disagree. I don't, I think it's just creating a better ecosystem for shorts right now. It's definitely not impacting how we're programming. We're still picking the films that we're passionate about, but it's really exciting that it does feel like there's just different opportunities for that film to live on. Like, it felt like 5 years ago, you kind of had the same trajectory for short film, not always like a stepping stone, but now, there is a lot more visibility and possibility for the film after their festival run. And if they have a distributor behind them, they're probably not going to put a lot of money behind it, but it will pop up in someone's algorithm and you'll have that opportunity. So I think it's just a positive for the ecosystem for short films right now.
Lisa, I'm curious what you think too, about.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone's saying. It's a positive. It doesn't really impact how we're programming, but it's a great thing. And I think the opportunities will only increase as streamers are looking for content, and hopefully there'll be more theatrical opportunities too. But
right.
I will say this, something that Paul was talking about, and I think we've mentioned how we don't have restrictions on films being online or playing other festivals, but that's where research is key because not all festivals are the same. I think it sounds like most of us like don't have premiere requirements, but there are festivals that do. So it's just best to like make sure that you know what the criteria is for your, top submission festivals.
I'm also just curious, and like, and again, this is a broad question, but what inspires you, and just what do you have a favorite genre or a subset of various genres, and what excites you about a film when you get it? Is there something wherein you're watching a film and you're like, this fits exactly what I would like to see, and so as a program I want to show it? Or like, I don't know how granular you want to get, but what is exciting all of you at this point in your careers, and what do you love seeing, and what would you like to see more of? Amber, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. I don't know that I can speak to like a specific genre. So I program for experimental documentary narrative really across the board in shorts. But I think something that's really exciting for me is when I feel like the film is coming from a very specific point of view or a very specific set of lived experiences, particularly ones that I haven't seen. I really like it when filmmakers are making films that are really personal to them. And that doesn't necessarily mean like about your life or about like a personal experience for you, but just like from a point of view that feels unique and your own as a filmmaker. I would say the other thing that's also really exciting to me is when there's a really nice meld of form and content, when the way that you're approaching how you're making your film and the way that you're approaching visuals and sound and all of these things really mesh nicely with the actual content of the film and they play off of each other. That's also very exciting for me. And that sounds very broad perhaps, but I'm also like, not looking for like just horror shorts, for example, or just, shorts about social justice. I'm really looking across the board. So I don't know that I can really speak to like a genre or a specific story that's exciting, but perhaps a way of filmmaking is more exciting to me.
Cool. No, that makes sense. Gabe, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same programming train as, we're programming for documentaries and narrative and animation, music videos. So I'm pretty agnostic to a specific type of film that I love. But, the films that stand out to me and that I get really excited about is on a long day of programming is a film that actually makes me laugh out loud because it's so rare. Comedies are so hard to do. I think it's one of the most underrated forms in filmmaking, and especially in shorts. So whenever you do come across that film that actually makes you laugh, it's just like something goes off in your brain. These endorphins are like, oh yes, awesome, this is great. And it kind of helps you power through the rest of your programming. But you'll also play a lot of festivals if you have a solid comedy, because everybody's in need of that. We're programming these things, and you need peaks and valleys even within a 90-minute program. And most of the stuff that you have will probably be pretty heavy, just because for us it seems like that's the majority of the submissions, which is great. And they have those stories that connect with or open you up to worlds that you weren't aware of. But it's really nice to have that palate cleanser to also like remind you that like, yeah, we can have fun and laugh. So those are the moments that stand out for me when programming.
Yeah, no, it's a really great point. Comedy is so underrated, which is a whole other conversation. It's so much more difficult to do great comedy than it is drama. Anyone else want to add to that? Things that really just pique their interest? Paul or Lisa, what do you love seeing when you get a submission?
I would reiterate what both of the former speakers have said. It for me, it's all about story, and I love all the genres of film. I just love finding those stories. It is, as I think this is my way of saying the same thing Amber said. It's amazing to me how many times a film that I love, then I hear the backstory from the filmmaker later about why they made it or whatever. And there's some personal element, somebody they know, a story they know, something in their life they had to make this film. You almost feel that. And somehow, film being so collaborative as it is, somehow they pulled a team together that all came together to make that vision happen. And that can happen anywhere. Like, yes, I'm in my mid 50s, I still love horror and thriller films. There are no genres. I love an experimental film that makes me feel something or makes me, whoa, I just saw something that blew my mind. And I came to this job from being a fan at my own festival. 30 years ago, I went to the festival and fell in love with shorts. And I would go to the festival and watch all the shorts programs and just throw in a few features around it, became part of the bigger team that we still have and eventually ended up in this role. Just because I love shorts so much, that's never changed. And what I loved was seeing in every program, a documentary, an animated film, something funny, something serious. So to this day, that's my search. I'm looking for the best 15 documentaries I can find, the best 15 comedies, so that I can deliver to the audience the same programs that I fell in love with. So great stories end up being the ones that get me, no matter what the genre.
Lisa, how about you? Same thing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I agree with Paul's. Story is key. And when you find that thing that makes you laugh, or just something that's done in a point of view that is surprising, like that's always an exciting thing. And for me, it's really exciting to discover new talent. Like when you find a film that you've never heard of the filmmaker, you don't know anything about them, like that's really exciting, because if we're getting excited about a film, like that means we want to know more and we want to see what they do next.
Yeah. I know some of you have spoken about this broadly, but if you get, 5,000 or 10,000 films, I'm assuming you have a committee. Not everybody sees every film, although some of you have said for some, every programmer watches every film, but I don't know, like Lisa, 10,000 films. Do you see 10,000 films?
No, but everyone on our team is a programmer. So there isn't like a screener phase before they come to us. So those 10,000 are split up amongst our team of, I think there's 8 of us now. And then we each watch, about 1,000-ish. And then we whittle that down to a group of a few hundred that are sort of our tops. And then we watch everybody's tops. And then discuss those and then whittle those down to the program that we end up showing. And when we're putting that program together, we're thinking about many things. We're thinking about the individual films, but we're also thinking about how they play together, who made these films, who are the people on screen, what are the stories being told. So there are so many minute factors that are out of control of the filmmaker that like it's impossible to feel like you can do just one thing to get it into the festival.
Is it, does it matter, like, if somebody submits, say submissions begin January and the last day to submit is in May or whatever it might be, is there some benefit to getting your film in early? Or?
Yeah, at least for us, it's cheaper, one. and I mean, we're going to watch everything all the way through. So it's not necessarily like your film's going to get forgotten about if it's in the beginning, or we're going to miss it if it's at the end. We're watching everything. I'd say get it in as early as you can, just because it's a benefit to you. You're not crushing to the deadline. You're saving some money. That would be my advice.
Yeah. Anybody else have a feeling about that too? In terms of time?
Exactly what she said. It's the only benefit with us is how it saves you money. Because the reality is, I'm like, you decide which one you like better. Look, the films we see early that we love, we sort of attach ourselves to and we fight for all the way. The films we see late that we love, they're there right, they're fresh in your mind. So which one do you think's more? In the end, I can tell you that we usually have 5 segments and the lowest percentage is 17%. The highest is 20. Like it's evenly spread throughout because we get about the same number of submissions. There are more films at the end, but we just get a bunch of things thrown at us that, it still ends up being the same percentage. So it just saves you money to be early.
Have any of you had a film that, for like, a lot of times there's kind of a theme that runs through the festivals each year, whatever that might be. And has anyone ever had a film that you just fell in love with? It was so great. It was really strong, but just because of I don't know, maybe the theme of the fest, or it just didn't work for that particular year. And how did you deal with that experience, knowing like this was really great, but it just didn't kind of fit within the the framework of what, you know, the fest was doing on that particular year? Has that ever happened to anyone? Yeah, Gabe?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's, you know, not in the sense that we have, you know, a certain program that we are trying to create from the beginning. Like the films kind of like create the narrative when we're doing the program. Every year is a fresh year, and you just can't help to not see themes in the films that you're really kind of attaching yourself to in that year. You know, you can't ignore what's happening culturally all over the world and what people are going through. And that's what art does. It's reflecting those times. So I think there's a natural language to the films in the program that do kind of have these themes that come about. And it plays a part of it, but you're not programming to that. So it kind of goes in the same space that there's still always going to literally be 100 films that I love that we're not going to be able to play. And, you know, maybe the theme of that year is one of the things that plays an aspect into that decision. Or sometimes it could be the opposite. You have like 10 films kind of on the same theme, and you're not going to want to program all of them. You might do 2 or 3 if it's a really strong topic, and these films kind of like, you know, come at it at different angles. But, you know, it's all very nuanced, and it's a different festival every year. But if you believe in the film and there's a festival you really want to be a part of, you know, don't give up. We've also passed on a film, and then a year later it was resubmitted and it just worked different for us, and then we played it. So just because it didn't play one year doesn't mean that it's not right. You know, every year is a different festival that you're programming for.
Right. Anybody else have a similar experience?
Yeah, I mean, we don't program by theme either. Some festivals do, but we're just looking at the films. And when we're putting the programs together, we want them to be a good experience for the audience. So we're trying to make it, you know, different aesthetics, different types of stories, you know, some comedy, some drama. Like, it's really like putting together a mixtape. You want the viewer to like have a wonderful time watching shorts, so they watch more. So that also factors in how many films are in the program, because engaging and disengaging can be tiring for an audience. How you open it, how you close it. Like, we're spending a lot of time watching the beginnings and endings of things, and those programs are documentary, animation, live action, some experimental, some, maybe a horror, and of course there's going to be films that all of us love that don't make it in. But that's when we tell filmmakers that, when we have to let them know they're not playing the festival. If we feel really strongly about it, we let them know we really love it and we're planning to recommend it to other festivals. We definitely track that filmmaker for the future. I think at least on our team, we all understand when things don't make it in, that it's just the program. It's just doesn't fit in what we're trying to do. So while it's sad, like, we move on.
Yeah. Cool. Unless anyone else has anything to say, I've got some audience questions here that I think we could get to. Someone had a basic question. Do you read cover letters, and how important is that cover letter? You know, if it lists everything from where you went to university to film school to what your prior experience is, how important is all that extra stuff?
I read cover letters after I watch films.
Okay.
It's already got to make the radar. I'm always interested in the backstory of a film, but I don't want the backstory to pre-pitch the film, because most of my audience is not going to read the backstory, and sometimes the filmmaker is not going to attend to tell the backstory, and I don't want that to matter. I don't want to need the filmmaker to come. I want to be able to share films that, just like I fell in love with them, I just watched, and I didn't need to meet the filmmaker. I just love their work. But I do love reading them. So they do have value, especially if it's a film I already love and you plus it up with it's a personal, relatable story. Because even sometimes I'll mention that to our audience. If I don't have a filmmaker and it's an incredible backstory, I will briefly mention that after the films as part of the Q&A. So it's important, but it's not an upfront thing for me. It's an after the film.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I do read cover letters. I do read them before. I like to know kind of what I'm going into and like who the filmmaker is before, but that's everyone programs differently. Everyone watches differently. But that being said, I would say you don't always have to have a cover letter. If you have a great story about your film, about the making of the film, about why you made the story or why you're connected with this community, perfect. I don't necessarily need to know where you went to college. I don't necessarily need to know kind of just generally, thanks so much for, screening my film, enjoy. If there's not kind of like a solid story for why you have made the film or that, you want to write a cover letter about, I would say don't go out of your way to write a cover letter just to have a cover letter, basically.
Yeah. Anyone else? Lisa or Gabe?
Yeah, I like not to read anything before I go in, even the synopsis, because like I want to see it as an audience would see it. And then if I have questions or I want to know more, I'll go and see if there's a cover letter and investigate, but I'm not typically reading them. But it's personal. Some people, every programmer is different.
Right. Gabe, how
Yeah,
about you?
well, for South by, we might be the only festival now that aren't on Film Freeway. Like we have our own submissions that like we were never on any of their submission platforms. So we created it in-house and we've maintained that. And so we don't even have an option to submit a cover letter or an EPK. So short answer is we're not reading that at all. We do have a director's bio that we'll look at. For me personally, I do it after I see a film. We're watching so much, I'm just kind of queuing up. And whenever I come across something I love, then I'll go and read more about the synopsis and the director's bio. I would say in instances for us, for the director's bio, I would err against listing all the films that you've done before. Like that's your chance for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and, what led you to becoming a filmmaker. And it doesn't really need to be about the film unless it's your first, and that's kind of, the driving force of why you started creating. But that's very specific to our event and how we do our submissions.
So another person had a question, they said they're a low budget filmmaker. And a lot of times in these film fests, and I go to them too, the films are, on the higher budget. So what if you're a low budget filmmaker, and could you speak at all to kind of the low budget films submitted? Is there a space for them, or have film festivals in general gotten to a place where you need to have something really, really polished in order to make an impression? I don't know if that's something that you can speak to. There's a difference between having, a film that you kind of know, it's starring a big name, you kind of know it's probably going to get distribution versus like a low budget person that's submitting something that doesn't yet have that support yet. So what are your thoughts on the low budget filming? Lisa, I'd be curious because you're at Sundance. So
Yeah, I mean, I think low budget's great. I mean, it's all about story for me, really. And I think most of us that like, if you're telling a story in a way that connects with an audience, if that's made with a cell phone or made very, low budget, that's great. Like, it doesn't have to be polished. We're just looking for something that we connect with, and that can be done at any budget level.
Right, absolutely. How about the rest of you? Amber?
Yeah, for sure. I love low budget. We have a very wide range of high to low budget in our shorts filmmaking. Seconding Lisa, it's very much about story approach, especially because with New Orleans, we're really trying to work on expanding access and breaking down barriers. That being said, the only time that I would say it would create a problem is if it impedes the ability to understand. So if we can't hear people talking, that might be a problem. That's usually the biggest problem, is sound, actually. Sometimes people it looks really great, they do a lot with the visuals, but there's a lot of background noise or you can't hear people talking. So low budget, awesome. Just make sure we can understand what you're bringing to us, because we want to know what the story is.
Excellent point. Yeah, Paul, your thoughts on that?
Well, she nailed it, because when I'm asked this question, typical panels, it's like, what's the most important thing? Sound. I know it sounds counterproductive, but it's the only thing I'll turn a film off and not watch it all the way through, because I know if that sound is like that, my audience is going to be totally taken out of it. They can't really follow the story. So that can't be wrong. Visually, they can look very different. You know, it's a wide range of films we play. We definitely had a lot of films this year in our festival, low budget, that completely nailed it on story. You know, a couple of the COVID related films were they were too on point and perfect, and scored really high with our audience, because an audience does not watch a film like filmmakers watch films. I always think, man, filmmakers rip each other apart for things that an audience didn't even notice, had no idea, because they were totally engaged in the story, and none of that shows up for an audience. So I watch a film like an audience member, because that's where I came from. And if it doesn't take me out of the story, and I love the story, it doesn't matter. It can look very different quality wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't come back from bad audio. It's just, that is kind of a killer, and that has nothing to do with budget. You know, especially in short films, I don't think there's more than 100 films we get that maybe had much of a budget to begin with. It's all pretty lo-fi, low budget. And you'd be surprised if you're attending a festival and you're watching the films as an audience member, when you talk to the filmmaker, you realize, oh shit, they made that for $200. It looks like $1 million. So, you know, it's all about the ingenuity of filmmakers. You know, the tools are literally in your hands, and we're definitely not looking for things because it seems high budget or low budget. It's the story that's going to connect to us, because honestly, everything looks pretty good. You know, 15 years ago was a little bit easier to pinpoint, like, oh, these guys don't have the resources, but that's what makes it trickier, because now programming things look good. Like, that's not a thing that is kind of making you go like at the beginning, well, I don't know if this is going to have quality. Like, you have to stay engaged, and it's the story and the emotion that comes out of you that resonates more than any kind of production value you're putting into the film.
Yeah, that's really excellent points. In terms of domestic versus international submissions, there was a question just about what's kind of the breakdown, and are you just as excited about submissions from international filmmakers as you are domestic? How does that play in? Who'd ever like to go? I don't know. Lisa, you want to go first, talk about that?
Sure. I'd say of the 10,000, it's probably 50-50 American, international. As an American festival, we try to be at least 50% American films that we're playing at the festival. And then that other 50% of internationals, we're trying to showcase as much of the world as possible, and particularly areas that we haven't shown in the past. So, you know, right now we're always looking for films from Central America, Africa, Asia. Of course, we see so many wonderful films from Europe every year, and we're excited about all the films we get. The international films, at least in Europe, there tends to be a lot more funding. So there's always great ones. And that's where some of those tough decisions come in when we're trying to showcase the world. You know, if we have 8 films from France that we love, we're not going to play all 8 of those films. And then we need to whittle that down to the ones that work with the rest of the films in the program.
Cool. Anybody else have any thoughts on international versus domestic?
I feel like we kind of like go about it the same way as Sundance, and kind of feel the exact same way, honestly.
Same here. Yeah.
Same.
Cool. Sorry, let me just, I want to see, there's a bunch of questions here. People are asking if the volume of submissions has changed due to the pandemic. Have you gotten more submissions or less?
There was a great fear. I know at our festival, there was a lot of talk and concern about how it would impact things. It did not impact them at all the first year. I mean, the number was so marginally smaller that it was a big surprise the other way, that I'm curious to see how it plays out long-term this year, because part of my thing was that when the pandemic hit, people could have had a lot of work that just needed edited and finished, but it was a little harder to shoot new work. So it's this year, I think we're really going to find out a little more about that. And by next year,
Yeah.
new products should be able to be happening. So I think we're in the midst of the year where we're going to find out. So far, we're not seeing scary low numbers, so it doesn't look like it's going to be a disaster, but it's way too early, at least where I'm at, to know, is it going to be less?
Yeah, I can say because our submission cycle actually just closed last week. So we've seen steadily increasing numbers since the early 2000s. This is the first year that it's gone down for us.
Hmm.
Yeah, last year it was highest numbers ever. This year, a little down.
Interesting. I'm curious, because film festivals have gone virtual, there's talk of still kind of continuing a hybrid in-person virtual option in terms of viewing, because, what the virtual option allowed is that, people that normally couldn't get to, I don't know, Palm Springs Film Festival or whatever, if they lived in Kathmandu or whatnot, they're now able to join, and it kind of opened up the playing field, so to speak. Going forward, will these, all of the film festivals at which you are programming, will they kind of still lean toward like a hybrid kind of, structure, so that, people still globally wide can participate with their short films in a way that maybe they couldn't before? Does that have any effect on the films chosen, or is that just a kind of a separate, irrelevant kind of thing?
I mean, for us, we're still sort of figuring out what January is going to look like. There will be a physical festival. It's back to 10 days, and there will be some sort of virtual component, but the details of that are still very much in the works. I think it's great, though, that more people are getting to see short films online. I mean, in Park City, like maybe a few thousand saw, or that's an overestimate for shorts, because usually it's smaller theaters, and so I think online provided the opportunity for thousands and thousands of people to see shorts that wouldn't happen physically in Park City. So I think it's a benefit. I know, of course, there's nothing that can replace seeing your film in a theater, but I think to have both is sort of the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Anyone else? Gabe, you have any thoughts on that?
No, we'll definitely have some online component. Our event's going to be in March, so we're still assessing what our event will be, with the focus on returning to an in real life event. But there were just a lot of benefits about having an online event. For South by Southwest, it's now gotten to the point where it costs as much to attend South by as it does Cannes, just because of the Austin market. Flights are expensive. Hotels are really expensive. You have to wait in long lines. For the online event, we got to break all those barriers away. It was wonderful because it's really pushed forward, having closed captioning for every single film. So it was the most inclusive film festival we've ever put on. And those are things that we're going to keep doing going forward, and doing it online really helps. I think it's going to be, an additional aspect to the festival, and not be how we did in 2021, where it was the entirety of the festival. And on shorts specifically, one of the things that I really loved about going online this year is, we made the decision to, break out of the 90-minute block for our shorts. And, especially because our event was so large and we're always cannibalizing ourselves, we're trying to engage people for like 12 hours straight. And, the conference, we had a huge conference with like 500 conference sessions, which is a lot of Zooms, but with famous people from all over sectors. And so people that were coming to the event for those conferences were breaking it up with short films. Like, it was great for them to find them individually. They're like, they may not have had 90 minutes, but they had 5 to 20 minutes to kill. So they were stumbling into short films more than the features. So we definitely saw way more viewers in short films online than we ever would have in real life. And the other thing that I also liked about programming online in that format is we didn't have to take into consideration the length of films. You know, it has to be 40 minutes or less to be a short, because that's for Oscar qualifying. I think we're all Oscar qualifying events. And while the film should be the length that it should be, when you're programming for 90-minute block, if you have one 30 or 40-minute film, that could potentially keep 3 or 4 other films out. So in the online event, we didn't have to worry about the runtime. We just programmed the number of films that we want and let the films find their audience that way. So that was an interesting thing to learn and was exciting, and something that, you know, I think we will keep going forward.
Interesting. Anybody else that wanted to speak to that I might have missed? No.
I can say that our festival coming up in November will be hybrid, online and in person, if you're curious. And then in the past, in terms of actually bringing filmmakers to the festival, we've always offered 2 hotel nights to every filmmaker who has a film in the festival. And this year, last year, when it was all virtual, we offered a stipend, which I think a lot of festivals have done, and which is really great. So in terms of 2022, still trying to get through 2021, but that's what it's looking like.
Someone had asked, does anyone else want to say something to that? Or
We're just the same. We're in the same boat. We're in March, like South by late March, early April, and there will be some hybrid version because there's just a whole audience we discovered that is very interested in participating that can't participate physically. And I think we all have a high level of confidence that, much like us, our passionate in-person audience is ready to come back, and they won't care that there's also a hybrid element. It's not going to keep them away. And there's only going to be so much we can do hybrid. We recognize that many of the features we play are going to be in person, and that's it when we get back to the festival world we're used to. But we want to do what we can to keep that other audience engaged and keep them, you know, seeing independent film.
cool. Someone had asked, like, how, you know, let's say you all get a film, okay, and this is a film that's been clearly submitted to, I mean, I know people, they submit to 13, 14, 15 festivals, like, all at once, right? They cast a wide net. Do you guys ever have any conversations internally, or, you know, like, oh wow, I saw this film too, you saw this film, like, well, we want it for ours, well, we also want it for ours, like, or is everything kind of kept really kind of private until the end? Like, people, like, quite a few people have asked, like, how much communication goes on interfest about the submissions?
I'd say I'll comment just this, that we probably have the wrong group, because I don't think any of us care as much, and I wouldn't mind talking about films because I'm okay if they're playing other places. I have many filmmakers who reach out worried because they just got accepted for some other festival right before us, and they're like, I want to hold off because you're Oscar qualified, I wouldn't want that. And we're like, we don't even make a deal about premieres here. And I'm okay, you know, when the one festival that affects me, and because I'm okay with it, I'm going to say, you know, Tribeca is really close to me, and it is important to Tribeca. They want as many premieres as they can get. And I know their programming team and I love them. And you know what? My audience won't care a year later. It'll be brand new to them next year. So I always think, hey, what a wonderful life if you got to, you know, premiere your film at Tribeca and a year later you finish a 1 year in Cleveland. You're having a great festival run, and you have to be a worthy film. You know, so I never hold that against anybody. I mean, it sounds to me like this group's all on that similar page where we wouldn't have to worry about the discussions, because if it fits us, we're going to play the film regardless of where else it's played.
Yeah, shorts are a lot different from features. For shorts, it is not a big deal whether you're playing somewhere else for us. And again, it sounds like everyone else here. We do talk a lot with other festivals, particularly in the Southern region, but it's not about submissions. It's really about like skill sharing and just building up regional art support. So
Cool. Anyone else? Lisa or Gabe, you good with?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the earlier point, is that we're not competitive with each other at all as far as films. And while, you know, we don't have a year-round dialogue with each other, there is kind of a dialogue in our lineups. Like, that's kind of the tip to each other, you know, seeing certain films pop up in other programs, like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool that we all like saw something in this film and it worked for our audience, and it's exciting for us to see for the filmmakers. And it has nothing to do with like, oh, well, we got it first and then they took it after us. It's more just like, that's so great. I'm glad that they went on to have this wonderful festival life and play these other festivals that we really respect. So that's for us, like the extent that we look at it.
Cool. Lisa, did you want to add anything to that? Otherwise, I think we have time for one last question.
No, that I agree with. It's the same for us.
So yeah, like a practical question. People are wanting to know, when is your next submission window, and for each fest. So if we could just go around and ask, when are you accepting submissions again for the next film festival? We can just start with Paul and go around.
Cleveland and Pittsburgh are open right now, and Coeur d'Alene just closed, but will open in 3 months for the next cycle.
Okay, Amber?
Yeah, we just closed last week. We're a fall festival, but we tend to open back up again in January. So pretty, one right after the other, basically.
Great. Gabe?
We're going to open for submissions on August 16th, and we'll take submissions through October 19th.
Okay. And Lisa?
Submissions are open right now. We have sort of tiered deadlines, but the final deadline is in mid-September.
Cool. Anything you guys want to add? I mean, I'm always curious, like, other than programming for festivals, here's a fun question. Are you working on any of your own filmic or any kind of artistic project that you would like to share with us? Gabe, you're smiling. You have something you're working on?
No, I was laughing at myself. It's like, no, I'm a slave to programming and elevating your work. Like, like I came into this and from the exhibition side, like working in a movie theater at 16, and I've been in exhibition now for like 25 years. So I've always found myself to be in support of films and bringing it to an audience and making it look and sound the best that it can. So yeah, I don't have any other thing. I will leave a last piece of advice, because I've come from the exhibition world, is, when you're budgeting, budget something for your exhibition copy, because I think that's something that filmmakers don't realize, that, oh, if you make it into a big festival, you're going to have to get a DCP created, and that can be costly. And now I know a lot of people are going to be requiring a closed caption as well. So just think about that and plan for that in your budget, because when you do start making it into festivals, that's a cost that a lot of times people are surprised by. It's like you get excited that you made it to a festival, and they're like, oh, okay, I have some work to do. So I would leave that with just like the last little piece of advice.
Cool.
Yeah, I do make my own work. I work as a filmmaker, and interestingly enough, recently, as of this year, a lot of our programming staff work both as programmers and as filmmakers. I'm not gonna pitch a project to you, but I will say that I feel your pain, and I actually really appreciate the dialogue that it creates with programming and filmmaking. But yeah, it's interesting.
Cool. Lisa?
Yeah, I'm not a filmmaker myself. Programming takes up a large chunk of my time. And then in addition to that, I work for the British Academy of Film and Television Arts in the US on a number of their talent development programs. So most of my focus is championing filmmakers and in all crafts and helping to get them to that next level.
And Paul, working on anything else, or you just also saved
I
it?
am very much like Gabe. I came from exhibition. I'm an ambassador for independent film that started mostly on shorts. Now I do features as well, but my passion is short films. Features get lots of love without my help. Happy to help when I can, but the shorts, it's my life, and I program 3 festivals. So it's always, okay, which one's next? Which one's next?
Yeah.
When I say 3, it's actually more festivals, because Pittsburgh does 4. So there's always, okay, what's up next? It's the West Wing. Okay, what's next?
Cool. So if we have time for one last question, someone just wrote something that would be kind of interesting. Festival fees can be exorbitant for first-time filmmakers. Is there any help out there in terms of I don't know, financial aid. Like, let's say you've spent all your money on your film, you're happy with it, but now the submissions process is expensive. Is there anything people can do about that, or just go out and raise more money? That's what people, you know, 2 people asked that. So
I mean, for us, we made a decision a couple years ago to stop providing fee waivers to sort of level the playing field, so that if people knew us, we didn't want it to be that only people who knew us or reached out via those methods were getting waivers. So we've decided not to provide them at all. I would say make sure you put money in your budget for submissions. It never hurts to ask. I would always ask every festival. Some might give it to you, you never know. But it's best to sort of plan that you have a good chunk of money to put towards that.
anyone else?
Say for, you know, South by, you know, we don't offer fee waivers, but, you know, it kind of goes back into your research. There are places out there that do have grants that you can apply for to help with the submission process. You know, in Austin, we've got the Austin Film Society, and they have a lot of different grants, and they have specific funds for, you know, you can apply to help submitting your film, and they have funds that you can apply to help with getting the exhibition copy of your film and once you do get into the festival. So, you know, really look into, you know, the city or state or country that you live in and see what grants are out there for those specific things.
Cool. Anyone else?
Yeah, so we do offer fee waivers and we do offer discounts. Our fee waivers, usually we partner with other arts organizations, both in the region and nationally, to offer fee waivers through there. And for the most part, if you're having trouble affording submissions because they are expensive and it's a costly part of the process, you can generally just email us, and we often do kind of give a discount, or we also bop around a lot at festivals and usually have like little discount cards on our person. And so we try to be relatively liberal with giving out discounts at the very least, because it is very cost prohibitive to be submitting to film festivals.
That's all the time we have. I certainly learned a lot. I hope other people did too. I want to thank you all for your time. I bet you guys are going to get some amazing submissions after this. And yeah, thank you so much for being a part of today's programming. It was really great meeting all of you.
You too. Thank you, Melina.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melina, for moderating, and thank you to everyone for taking part in the conversation. Take care.